what if the only thing different about the Little Ice Age and now, so rain 50 years ago, 100 years ago, would have added mass to the glacier in ways in which it doesn't today. The reason the scientific method exists is because, and you can't call yourself a scientist unless you're playing by that rule. That is the defining feature, and you don't need a PhD to do that. What we do on an individual level, this carbon footprint counting, has no impact. I'll say it. Prove me wrong. If you're going to make $1 bazillion, right? Doesn't it make sense to spend $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $100 million to confuse the issue? What scientists are after is the same thing that, you know, your preacher or rabbi or anyone else like that are after. Like I could be right on top of camp right now. I have no idea. I can't see these angular drifts that I just know from experience will break your gear, and they have. It's dinner time. Did enough damage for the day. Just after dawn on day 6. Science has been done for a couple of days now. And now we're just hanging out, enjoying the scenery, waiting for the weather to cooperate with taking off. Today is not a very cooperative day. As you can probably see, we got about 1 inch of snow overnight, turning the place into a winter wonderland. The challenge with flying is, or the challenge with, how do you call it, aviating. You know, I brought my wing covers with me to keep the snow off the wings. It keeps it on the covers. But if I put them on during freezing rain, the covers can freeze to the wings, which can be even more problematic than the snow. So I decided not to put them on. I guess that was part of motivated by laziness. The other thing with putting them on in the rain is then they get waterlogged and they're much heavier. In any case, the rain turned to snow overnight, and I now have snow all over the plain. It's kind of a snowbally snow, so I'm going to sweep it all off and hope that we get a little break, get a bit of sunshine to melt off the rest, and then probably put the covers on. We'll see. Definitely changes the look of the place. Feels much more like winter. It can turn back into summer tomorrow. I mean, I don't think it's going to, but later in the week it could. I think this is exactly what happened maybe 2 or 3 days before I landed here a week ago with the snow like this. You can see the surface is kind of similar looking, kind of brutally white. Makes it a lot easier to walk around, make it easier to taxi, maybe a little smoother taking off. Now we can get snow any day of the year here, and we have gotten snow probably every day of the year here. And I've often thought, you know, like right now there's basically no melt going on. The bright white surface reflects the sunshine, so there's no ice melt happening, and it's a little bit too cloudy for it. But even if the sun came out, it would take it a day or two just to melt off what little snow we had. This is just 1 inch. Right? If we had 10 centimeters of snow, it would take, you know, in the peak of summer, it would take 3 or 4 days to get back down to the ice. We have maybe 10 weeks of melt season here, say, you know, about June 1st to about August 10th, mid-August, maybe a little earlier in May, 10 to 12 weeks. Well, if it snowed 10 centimeters once a week for the summer, right, that would effectively shut off ablation, shut off melt for the year, right? So all the snow that melted, or all the snow that fell in winter, you know, the sunshine would never reach it, you know, because of these summer snowfalls. So another thing I've always wanted to test out, now that I have a model to do that, I'm really looking forward to it this winter, is test out the impacts of summer snowfall. So like I showed those, you've seen these, you can even see it here, these moraines, right? That's how big the glacier was 150 years ago, 100 years ago, somewhere in there. Well, what if The only thing different about the Little Ice Age and now was that it snowed more in summer then. That would do it, right? That would keep the snow from melting. If we one snowfall a week or so. So it's things like that. It's these scenarios we like to test out. Is it snowy or was it cloudy or was it warmer? Was it snowier in summer versus snowier in winter? These are the kinds of questions that we can ask through and answer through modeling that help us understand today's climate change and how today's climate was potentially different from climate of the past. I mean, now that we have an instrumental record going back almost 100 years or more than 100 years, but in depth certainly 50 years, we know how climate is changing now, but using glaciers we can reconstruct what the climate was back then or take our best guess at it. And there's a lot of good clues we can use to do that, not just from glaciers but other sources, and compare the two. And so glaciers become a sort of an ancient weather station that we can revive and get information from. In ways that we can do in no other way but studying glaciers. The snow makes things a lot sloppier too. It's going to be wet in the tent. How the snow, another big question in terms of modeling it, and as far as I know, and I'm not an expert in this, but that transition between rain and snow is a big question for modelers. So we know from our climate models, weather prediction models in the short term, we know it's going to rain or snow. We know there's going to be precipitation happening. Question is it going to fall on the ground here as rain or snow? And at what elevation is it going to turn to rain? So in the tundra, it's probably raining right now. We're at, last night was probably 33, 34 degrees here, and now it's probably 30, 31. I mean, it's warm. The water's dripping off the wings. I'm not wearing gloves. So why did this fall as snow and not rain? It's kind of an open question. It's a very complicated question. We like to think in modeling, because the data we have at hand is that, I have an air temperature sensor here. I can tell what temperature it was. And I say, well, if it's below zero, below 32 the precipitation will fall as snow instead of rain. But it's not as simple as that, because whether this precipitation falls as snow or rain depends as much, if not more, on what's happening in the atmosphere. The temperature it formed, the atmosphere it went through. Because, I don't know if you've probably sensed it or felt it yourself, but I know in Fairbanks, it's very often the case we get snow in the mid-30s or upper 30s, because the air that the snow formed in, higher up in this, is colder. And as it falls as snow, it's going to take it some time to melt into rain. And the question is, do you have that much time? And whether precipitation falls as rain or snow, it's a big one for a glacier, right? Because it's snow that makes glaciers grow for the most part. Rain helps too, and that's another. I was talking about that sponge we call firn. It's this matrix of snow from years, sometimes decades past, that it's in the process of turning to ice. Well, it's still porous. There's still ways for liquid to get into it. It's not ice yet. So when it gets rained on, that rain acts just like meltwater from the surface, right? That rain drips down into the sponge and refreezes there, or it warms it up and forms ice lenses. So the impact of rain, let's say 50 years ago. So 50 years ago, early 1970s, where I'm standing now was accumulation area. This would have been, there was still been snow here from the previous winter, right? So we call that firn as it ages more than a year. So this firn limit would have been here and up. So all the rain that fell the past week or so would have landed on that sponge, landed in that firn, and a lot of it probably would have refrozen there, right? Become more glacier. But today it rains and it just washes off, right? It just runs off on the ice because there's no firn. That sponge doesn't exist. So rain 50 years ago, 100 years ago, would have added mass to the glacier in ways in which it doesn't today. It's a little bit of a feedback there. The glacier's getting bigger. Because the glacier's bigger and healthier, it gets bigger and healthier in a sense. So it's one of those tipping points with the disappearance of firn. Not only is the ice getting colder because it's just exposed to the atmosphere now, it's not protected by that warm blanket, that warm sponge. It doesn't gain as much mass from rain. It can only gain mass from snow. So it's in a harder position to get bigger, right? So it takes more snow now than it used to, more precipitation falling as snow than it used to keep its size. And I think this is a great example of how that works here. This, what fell right here, could be the start of winter accumulation for this coming winter. But if it fell as rain, it wouldn't have been. It just would have washed off. Yeah, I'm just wandering around the plain here, looking at it as I'm talking. You can see it's warm. It's dripping right here. But before it gets any colder, and those drips turn into ice, I got to get to work and get as much of this snow off the plain as I can, and then again decide whether to put the covers on or not. It's a tricky thing. It's kind of there's some heuristics and prior experience I can use, but it's really a roll of the dice, which is whether they help or hurt at this point. But we'll figure it out. It's about an hour later, still at the plain. I swept the wings, swept all the snow off, got it really well swept off. It stopped snowing, and it was still dripping. Temperature must be right about freezing. Actually, it's probably more like 2 hours. So anyway, I was watching it drip off, letting it dry. I thought, well, maybe I'll just let it dry. Maybe it won't snow. And then a few, like rain almost, started falling. It's like, the worst thing that could happen right now is to get freezing rain, like this super cooled liquid that's just itching for a place to freeze onto. So I started putting the covers on, and in the process of that, the snow started coming down again. So I'm sitting under the wing. Good news is the anchors are holding, both the deep ones and the shallow ones. There's no melt going on right now, so that simplifies that part of the process. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. I think even if the wing covers do freeze on a bit, even if they get destroyed taking them off, that's better than ice that I can't retract or take off. And I think in the end, I'm just going to have to wait for a sunny day to kind of dry things off anyway. Hopefully that'll come before spring, but we'll see how it goes. While I was sweeping the wings and putting the wing covers on, I was thinking though, this is a bit of a rant, I guess, I don't know, but people ask me what I do. I used to say I was a professor. It's really simple. It's one word, leave me alone. Now I haven't been able to do that. I was a professor for 17 years or so. What do I say? Depends who I'm talking to, but more often than not, I say I'm a glaciologist. Invariably, the first question I get asked after that is, I should say there's two branches of questions. So, but the first question typically is, doesn't the Earth's climate go through natural cycles anyway? See, I know where this conversation's going. I've been there. Not my first rodeo. It's a leading question, right? People have done their independent research on YouTube and think climate change, human-induced climate change is bullshit because, there's a guy out there, he's been ostracized by the scientific community. The mainstream science community doesn't want to hear what he has to say, so now he's on YouTube, so it must be true. Yes, the Earth's climate goes through natural cycles. And you know who told you that, or told him that to tell you that? We did, right? Scientists, right? Climate scientists. We're the guys that have been digging around the dirt, in the glaciers, in the oceans, getting frostbite, getting chased by bears, getting so many mosquito bites you can't count them anymore, to get the primary data that shows that, yes, the Earth's climate goes through cycles. It does. Yeah, we know that. We told you that. And we know that so well. There's so many thousands and thousands and thousands of us doing that over the past 50 years, even longer, but really the past 30 to 40 years has been so intense. We have hundreds of thousands of proxy records, clues about the Earth's climate, coming from the most, people come up, I hear some of these proxies they're using, saying, what? But they come up with new ones all the time. Looking at bat shit in caves. That's a pretty common one now, but yeah, everything that lands on the Earth and becomes part of it and gets buried has got some clue as to what climate was like. There's no mystery here. Climate does go through cycles. You have some of the smartest people in the world figuring that out, and I don't include myself among them, right? People much smarter than I, looking at the tiniest details, all this basic chemistry, atomic level, subatomic level chemistry to get these clues. It's crazy. And it's good crazy, but it's like, holy shit. These people spend their lives, smart people spending their lives figuring this stuff out. And you know what? Those same smart people, right? The same smart people that told you the Earth's climate goes through natural cycles on its own without human influence. Those same smart people are the ones saying, hey, you know what? There's something different about what's going on now. It's not like what's going on before. It's just different. I'm not going to go into the details there, but it's different. How do you trust these guys? How does someone trust us about the natural cycle thing and not about that, right? I don't know. Obviously, this is not science we're talking about anymore. And this is kind of my point about the other day. It's like, I think about this all the time. Why am I collecting these data? I'd be delusional, so delusional to think that my ice temperature measurement, this mass balance measurement is going to change anyone's hearts and minds about climate change. It just doesn't. These data points don't do that. I'm talking to these data, they go to people that understand the game called science, right? That have committed, that have dedicated themselves to playing the game by the rules, right? And those rules aren't complicated. Those rules, there's really just one. The scientific method has as its fundamental assumption, the reason the scientific method exists is because scientists, the people that profess to be scientists, all agree, whether they do it out loud or actually even realize it or not, they all agree that the human capacity for self-deception is unlimited. We can convince ourselves of whatever batshit crazy ideas we can come up with and believe it with such ferocity that we're willing to kill, murder, rape, torture, genocides. Right? We can't trust ourselves to believe, to know the truth in that way. Thus the scientific method. And that says, look, if you got an idea, share it with your friends and colleagues, let them dissect it, see if you've made a mistake somewhere in your thinking. And if you have, you can discuss it, but if you agree, yeah, this guy's right, I did make a mistake here. You gotta come up with a new idea and do it gracefully, right? Say, okay, yeah, I made a mistake here. Okay, thanks for pointing that out. But you know what? I can go back to work and I'll, yeah, my thermistor string. Yeah, I used the wrong thermistors. You're right. It was the wrong brand. These are known to have errors. Yeah, this 3-degree warming I sensed. Yeah, that was wrong. Okay, oops. What can I do? Did the best I could at the time. I would have done better if I could. Now I know. Now I'm going to go out there and drill another hole and put a different thermistor in there. That's the way it works. That's all there is to it. There's a lot more nuance in the details, but that's basically it. You got to share it with your friends, let them critique it, and when they find a mistake, you accept it and you move on. You don't kick over the table and start a YouTube channel and say, these guys are out to ostracize me. I alone know the truth. This tens of thousands, 99.9% of the rest of the scientist community is in some conspiracy against me. It's not the way it works. Yet, it's working, right? And it's working. It's working, right? It's an issue. It's an issue that we as scientists tend to look the other way on, because if there is some conspiracy going on here, it's just sanity. We're just trying to keep our wits about us with all this insanity around us. So we kind of retreat maybe into our own little world there and say, what can we do? You know, I'm a glaciologist. I'm not a marketer. I'm not a social scientist. I don't, you say, you know, you should do more. Do more what? I mean, anyone that plays the game by the rules comes to the same conclusion almost instantly, right? There's such a mountain, overwhelming mountain of data out there. A cursory look would convince anyone that's interested in being objective about the results they're coming up with. Cursory look. Yet, half the population doesn't. What can you do? But it got me thinking a little bit about science, taking the scientific method to, you know, Mr. YouTube, that's one man standing alone against the world. There's a guy, I shouldn't mention his name, it's not important. I thought he's a great guy. I think most people thought he's a great guy. I mean, he was friendly, but he would publish, he would come up with these batshit crazy ideas, right? This guy's a PhD, he's a smart guy, right? He would come up with these batshit crazy ideas and get them published in scientific journals, right? So this is me disproving Mr. YouTube, right? Saying that, oh, he's been ostracized. There's some grand conspiracy here that nobody wants to hear my ideas. There's this boys club. They're protecting their own interests. Nobody wants to be disproven by me, so I have to go on YouTube. I'll disprove that right now. This guy, this is one example of probably, this is just one from a field closely related to mine. I'm sure there's one guy, there's one in every crowd. I'm sure every scientific crowd there's a guy like this. He would come up with these ideas. Again, he's a smart guy. And he knows he's being provocative here, right? But he knows also that the ideas he's publishing or putting into papers and trying to get published can't be disproven, right? Because there's just not enough data yet to disprove it. So he's saying, you know, there could have been an ice sheet here that came down this way into Siberia and did this and that. The rest of the scientific crowd goes, oh, man, that's bullshit. But they can't prove it, right? Because they don't have enough data to say, no, this guy's wrong. This theory is wrong. Here's the flaws. They don't have enough data to say that. They know in their guts, they know from their own field work, but they never thought about this problem. So they don't have enough to say, you know, reviewers just don't have enough information. Say, you know, there's enough that sounds about right here that, okay, we're going to publish this paper, right? That's how it works. That becomes part of the scientific literature. It becomes part of the body of knowledge. That doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean we don't disagree, right? But we're kind. You know, it's a useful paper. And this is one of many, right? He told me one time, with some pride, he was not without his sense of pride at all, but he told me one time that he was proud of the fact that he'd probably funded more graduate students in this field, sort of ice sheet geomorphology, such type stuff, than any other faculty around. And he was right? This is a bit of tangential field to mine, but I don't know the answer, I shouldn't say, but I wouldn't be surprised if 24 federally funded projects got funded by faculty from around the country, around the world, to disprove his various ideas, right? That's where the funding came from, was this guy published this paper, but we think he's wrong, and here's how we're going to prove that he's wrong. You know, we're going to disprove his idea. That's how it works, Mr. YouTube guy, right? That's how it really works, right? We're more or less a friendly group of people, you know? Like I said, there's just that one rule, and anyone can play that game. You don't have to have a PhD. When you submit a paper to a journal, nobody asks if you got a PhD. They ask your affiliation because, well, they want to know where to send the bill. You know, when you publish a paper, it's self-publishing, right? These journals, some of these journals are charging $15,000, charging a guy like me $15,000 to publish a paper on what? On this. $15,000? I mean, I could buy a car. I mean, why would I spend $15,000? Anyway, it's a whole nother rant. But, you know, people don't spend that kind of money, and that's the top-end journals are the most expensive. You know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 is more common, but still, that's a lot of money, right? I think of I could build a new weather station, 2 weather stations for that, 3 weather stations, the simple ones. Why would I want to spend that on, you know, this racket that's a publishing thing? If there's a conspiracy, it's there. It's the financial one. It's not guys like us or people like us. So all these people, Mr. YouTube is trying to convince that there's some conspiracy. You know, we're all out there. We're all, you know, closing ranks around our ideas, or we're all part of some government conspiracy. I mean, you can see here, where's the government here? If anything, they're trying to shut me down, not help me. You know, it doesn't exist. Every one of us would love to disprove the human aspect of climate change. We'd love it, right? If we could do it, we would have done it. There's no conspiracy here. Everyone's out to disprove the other person. That's part of the fun of the game, right? I mean, they do it in a polite, respectful way. But yeah, like this guy, you know, he was out there he had the balls, the absolute balls, to publish papers he knew were going to get disproven. That takes more heroics than Mr. YouTube will ever have, right? To actually get a paper published, you know is going to be disproved. And why isn't Mr. YouTube doing that? Right? Because he can't. Because he's delusional, right? He's out there jerking off in public for his own amusement, right? He's got nothing good to say. He's just trying to get a whatever. I don't know what's in his head. But it's not science, I can tell you that. All right? He's not playing the game by the rules. And you can't call yourself a scientist unless you're playing by that rule. That is the defining feature. And you don't need a PhD to do that. You've seen what I do, right? I mean, I remember I have a damn tape measure and I measure a stick in the ice. It doesn't take a PhD to do that. Anyway, pick one of the 100,000 glaciers in Alaska that aren't being measured and call it your own and do that for the next 50 years. And you will be a scientific legend, right? Because nobody else is doing it. Right? You don't need a PhD to do it. No one's going to refute your work. Nobody's going to say you're not part of our club. Even when you go to scientific meetings, nobody asks you what your credentials are. You just have to have a good idea. And, you know, anyway. These people, man. But what do you do? What do you do? I mean, we're all out here for our different reasons. So I'm talking about field sciences mostly now. And it's not to save the world. I mean, that's one of the check boxes, right? That we're trying to be useful. But how useful are we being? It's an open question. It's something I wrestle with a lot. And I've tried to pose that question to my peers, and nobody really wants to hear it, because if there's a conspiracy, it's kind of like that. And it's not like a conspiracy. It's just human nature, right? I mean, yeah, things are changing. I mean, climate change is in the vocabulary now, right? It wasn't 30 or 40 years ago. Not like it is today. And changes are happening, but, you know, they're not really happening. I mean, the fundamental causes of the human behavior leading to the changes in climate that are causing, that's not changing. We're addressing the symptoms, not the cause. Paper or plastic, gives a fuck. This has nothing to do. This is going to have no impact. What we do on an individual level, this carbon footprint counting, has no impact. I'll say it. Prove me wrong. Like Terry would say, prove me wrong. Right? Has no impact, because the fundamental causes, the machinery, we're cogs in a wheel, and little wheels in a huge machinery that we have no control over as individuals. And we can say, yeah, if we band together, we could, but, you know, it's not happening. I mean, you just look at COVID. I mean, here's a prime example of very clear-cut science, what it takes to keep people from dying. And yet, you know, within days or weeks, government conspiracy, people trying to put their thumbs on us by wearing a mask, basic level science just being ignored. That kills people. And what hope do we have as climate scientists to convince people of something that's, you know, I mean, COVID dropped dead a week later. This, you know, we're not going to drop dead. You know, a lot of us are going to have to move. A lot of us are going to, you know, these low-lying ocean countries. You know, there's the list is manifold, but they're not as imminent. The cause isn't as direct. And Mr. YouTube can go out there, and worse, these think tanks that go out there that are very smart people twisting the words of real scientists trying to do something good and turning them into bullshit. And the NGOs and the media distorting what we say. I mean, the media says, you know, we have to have both sides of an argument. There is no argument in this, right? Scientifically, you don't have to have both sides, right? There is no other side. It just doesn't exist. So to pretend there is one, and then, these well-funded sources just throwing disinformation out there. I went to a meeting one time. This guy from the Navy was there. It's a weird meeting. It wasn't like a science. It was sort of science, but also social. I don't know. It's just a bunch of people I'd never seen at meetings before. This guy from the Navy was there. It was really cool. He says, people ask me, why does the guy from the Navy care about climate change? And he's like, well, because naval bases tend to be located at sea level, so sea level rise is kind of important to us. Building seawalls is going to be, it's going to cost $1 bazillion. And it occurred to me at that time, what to him and to me and to you and I, whatever, is a cost of $1 bazillion. That means somebody's going to make $1 bazillion, right? Who are we writing those checks to? So if you're going to make $1 bazillion, right, and here I'm saying, prove me wrong. If you're going to make $1 bazillion, right, doesn't it make sense to spend $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $100 million to confuse the issue, to make it look like guys like us are idiots, or that we don't know what we're talking about, or we're all part of some conspiracy, or we're in it for the fortune and glory, right? We're going to fund Mr. YouTube to spout his nonsense. Because that's money in the bank. Invest $1 million, make $1 bazillion, right? Let it ride. This is the problem. This is why paper and plastic is bullshit, right? It's a useless, it's just jerking off for the benefit of your neighbors. The real problem is I'm not even getting into the real problem, but I've identified that one. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong that a board, some company, look at cigarettes, look at big ag. It's all the same. This is no different. We're not here. We do have, as scientists, we do have a marketing problem. I admit that. We're not good at it. We haven't really thought it through. I think the fundamental thing that we don't speak up enough about is, we like to talk about, we're in pursuit of the truth, But what is the truth? Truth is, what we're trying to get at is to identify reality as it actually is. That's why we can't actually prove our results. All we can do is disprove the alternatives. If we disprove everything enough, the theory goes, then what we're left with is the truth. And that truth, to me, that truth is synonymous with love. Love, rightly understood, love without filters and conditions and judgments. Love is acceptance. It's pure acceptance of reality. It's not questioning reality at all. It's accepting it. And so, science and spirituality, they're the same to me. And I don't think I'm deluding myself here. At worst, they're two sides of the same coin, but they're really identical. What scientists are after is the same thing that, your preacher or rabbi or anyone else like that are after. They're about accepting the truth, acceptance. Acceptance is love. That's what it really means. It's about accepting reality as it is. And, in our title, those of us who have a PhD, right? The PH part is philosophy, philosophical doctor. Philosophy is a lover of truth. And we focus on that truth part a lot. And what we don't focus on is the love part in our marketing, right? In our PR, essentially, right? And I'm using those words kind of tongue in cheek. We need to, I think, and again, prove me wrong. Let's do the experiment. If we all self-acknowledged in our own community that we're here for love, right? To find love, to seek love, to feel love, to experience love, those aha moments that we have when we find something out, that's touching the divine. That's being in heaven momentarily. Oh my God, I've seen the truth. I've felt acceptance. I know what the truth is. And it's a visceral thing. It's not something you write in a paper. It's visceral. And that's what love really is. That's what my experience was out here when I was, whatever kind of brain fart I had that for 2 weeks where, all that fear and anxiety was just completely gone. And all that was left was love. It just emerged spontaneously. I could give it as much as I want and never depleted my supply. That's what that experience was like. It was like being in heaven. That's what those individual moments are like too. And I think that's a big reason, it's a bit like chasing a high, which kind of causes it to, to never actually reach it. But those aha moments, those disproving of popular theories, that's what we live for as scientists in some respect, right? To disprove what somebody else did, so that we can get a little closer. And it's not just, it sounds a bit egotistical, and there's a lot of that for sure. And some of it's healthy and some of it isn't. But it gets us closer, right? It's that competition. It's like, marathon runners or whatever, trying to be the best. We're all trying to be the best as best we can, and this is how we do it. Other people do it, whatever, through sports or, their own fields. This is our way of doing it. But I think if we did that, if we put more of a focus, a verbal focus, that's what we're out here for, is for love. Then Mr. YouTube would have a much harder argument convincing people that, we're nefarious, diabolical, government-funded, whatever his deal is, right? We're real people. We're out here busting our ass, collecting primary data for little to no pay, certainly little to no reward in terms of public acceptance. But we're out here for love, in all its manifold reasons, the love of the job, the love of the environment, the love of, others. We're here in service. One way or another, we're here in service to the rest of the world. And I think we need to put more of an emphasis on that as scientists and make that more forefront, and see where that goes, both for our own sakes, to helping us understand why we're doing this. So in weak moments when we're like, why the hell am I out here freezing my ass and wondering if I'm ever going to take off from this glacier? To get us through those darker times, snowing, and also to just let people know in some other way that we're all on the same side here. We're not trying to be a pain in your ass by speaking the truth. We're just calling it, right? We're trying to dispel superstition for the collective good, right? So we don't all drive ourselves off a cliff through ignorance, right? That's what we're trying to do, is dispel ignorance. And, I guess to those guys listening to the YouTube guy, or people, I should say, separate what we say as scientists from what you hear other people saying what we say, right? The NGOs, the media. The scientists say this. No, don't listen to them, right? They're out there for their own purposes. They're the ones, if there's a conspiracy, they're the conspiracy people, right? They're out there trying to make money from what we're doing, right? Listen to us. Listen to what we say. Read the journals. There's plenty of good journals that abstract into more, less jargony language what we say. Science News is a great one. It's a weekly. Everything's in plain English. We're out there trying to help. Doing the best we can. We make mistakes, sure. But we're out there trying to help. And you might find a few bad apples that are out there for other reasons, but you won't find anyone out here like that, right? People collecting the primary data. It's the people wearing suits and being talking heads, looking at what other people do. Find out what they're actually doing. Are they out there freezing their ass off? That might help you learn something. Anyway, I'm ranting. I'm on my 200-meter thick soapbox right now. But I guess that's why we're here. We're here for love. One way or another, we're here for love. And I hope that that's why we're here. What happens next in the next moment, that's the next moment's issue. Right now, the next moment is I got to go back in the tent, make a little breakfast, call my son and wish him happy birthday, and get back to my knitting. Well, it's about 4:30 in the afternoon now. This is some of the best visibility we've had all day. It's pretty much been a whiteout. Snow's kind of come and gone, but you know, we're just kind of in the clouds. I have some things I need to do away from camp, but I really don't like traveling in a whiteout. I mean, I'd be fine, but maybe I wouldn't. If I'm by myself, I try not to take too many chances. So I don't know. If it stays like this, I'll go take care of things. I gotta pull that bridge up from the stream over there and put the snow machine to bed on top of it. And then I gotta go down glacier that way. And I really should do a little structural maintenance on that one thermocouple or thermistor site. But I've mostly been around camp today, or yeah, all been around camp today. Did some reading, some meditating, some knitting. Fiddle farted around here. I cleaned up this weather station a bit. I had some time-lapse cameras, nominally time-lapse cameras, looking at this pole right here, among other things. So these pieces of tape, 10 centimeters apart, some of them come off. So as the pole melts out of the ice, the camera takes pictures of the pole once an hour, at least it's supposed to. And more pieces of tape emerge from the ice or from the snow. And then by sitting there looking at the photos on the computer, I can count, how many centimeters of melt we had in a day or in a week, etc. So it's kind of like a poor man's way of measuring snow melt and snow accumulation for that matter. There are better ways to do it, much better ways to do it, but they are also much more expensive and take a lot more just overhead, like getting your head into the programming and keeping things going. I haven't yet turned that back into that corner yet, but I'm more and more motivated to do that. So the cameras they're not on here now, but they were located on this weather station here. And the past couple winters, the snow depth's been, this logger box has almost been buried. So you can see that. So I'm standing at this level, so I'm putting the cameras up here. The other problem was I had this old camera here that we're using for the cloud studies and the fog studies. And also the FreeWave antenna was here. So there just wasn't a place to put the cameras here. The issue was putting the cameras up here. I get photos towards the end of summer like this. Take a look at, I don't know if I can do this. The bottom, I really need to see the bottom of the pole, but this structure is close enough, those cameras are high enough, I don't see the bottom of the pole. You see the difference there, right here? So if I can't see the bottom of the pole, I'm losing some data there, right? Because as the pole melts out, yeah, it gets to be a bit of an issue. So that's kind of what happened. The cameras got it through late July this year. And so I lost a little bit. It's okay. So now I'm going to be able to put the cameras a lot lower, and that should solve that problem. The other solution would be to put this whole rig further away, but I'm not about to move that. So cleaned up some old junk. Gonna add a little bit more new junk. Clean it up, got rid of probably 2 rolls of electrical tape. That's also the poor man's way of attaching things. Electrical tape works wonders. It works great out here. It's much better than duct tape. Never use duct tape out here. Only electrical tape. But yeah, electrical tape, quick and easy for attaching wires and instruments and things. But I long for the days when I built things right. And I aspire to, wow, look at that. That's the best view by far I've seen in 2 days. I aspire to build a long-term weather station, get rid of all these others, clean them all up, reutilize them, cannibalize them as I need to, but build a nice new long-term weather station that, yeah, it's better than all these pieces of junk. Wow, that's beautiful. So we'll see if this little break in the weather holds. I'll head over, it's not too far, over to, let's see, where the hell are we? kind of at the base of that hill. That's where that bridge was, where I was crossing the stream. So I'll go up there, put the snow machine to bed, and yeah, it's getting to be dinner time. So one little project, and then that would just leave going downhill. Now it's actually, I can actually see down there. I might just walk it. That's this, it's kind of, you can't see the station, but it's right about there on that lower plateau, about a mile away. Things that would take, an hour total when the weather's good. Now it's 2 days I've been trying to get this stuff done just because the weather's so shitty. But I guess I shouldn't say that. The weather's the weather. Snow makes glaciers grow. So, gotta be happy for it. Glacier's happy. Wow, yeah, now we got the whole view of Mount McCall. Yeah. I don't know if you can hear that. It's a rock fall coming out of that valley right there. It's constant. It's always one little rock somewhere, but then sometimes there's some pretty big slides. That one's still going. Whew. Anyway, time to go. Well, I just finished moving getting the bridge off the river, putting the snow machine on it for the winter. I'm headed back to camp. I utilized that window just after I shut off the video to scream up there, find the bridge, find a place to put it, all that. Because mucking about like over the river with this really heavy, awkward bridge in a whiteout, it's just a bit over my tolerance level. And I started the video here because behind me is where I came from. I got a snow machine track to follow back to camp. That's what I'm walking into. The clouds are moving back up, and there's just these little brief windows in between clouds. So now I'm about to walk into a whiteout, but I've got the snow machine track to follow, and unless something really weird happens, like in the Bermuda Triangle, I should be able to find my way home. Reminds me, one of the few times Kristen ever bitched me out was we were here. So our son, forget what it had his first 7 or 8 birthdays up here, right? Because this is the time of year we got to do stuff. And we had this fog I talked about the other day. So on storm days, back then you'd bring DVDs. I brought the John Carpenter's The Fog. I thought it was appropriate. So, my son was maybe 3, 4. We started watching this horror movie, basically in the fog. I guess not the brightest move on my part. But he survived. We all survived. Yeah, here we are. Yeah, it's not a total whiteout. I can still see a little bit of the peaks, but it's getting pretty thick. But with the snow machine track, you can see, like, without the snow machine track, what are you looking at? Being inside a ping pong ball. Like, I could be right on top of camp right now. I have no idea. I can't see. All I can see is the snow machine track going off into the distance, kind of like that behind me. It's disorienting, even on foot with multiple people. It's disorienting. Like, you think you know where you are. Something seems really far away. You realize it's only 10 feet away. At least with the glacier, you've got, and this is sometimes tough too in a thick whiteout. You've got up and down. The glacier's got a slope to it, so at least you've got some directionality. But even with that, it's not that wide a glacier. Find yourself bumping into one side or the other, not realizing where you were, but it's not the case now. Oh, see some sign of camp. So it's just one quick trip down Glacier a little ways, and then everything else is just at camp. I got to put those time-lapse cameras up to look at the survey pole. I want to add one more sensor to that weather station I just realized I had brought with me, but I got to do that when it's a little bit drier. Oh, look at that, there's people. Oh. But getting more and more excited about new weather station, new string of GPS units measuring velocities every few hours the whole summer, maybe the winter. Really capture the demise, the last of the dynamics here before it goes away. But I'm gonna need another person. Get some money. Those things aren't cheap. But just focus on what we do best. Just focus on our inner peace. Somehow everything's gonna work out. Don't know how, don't need to know how. What can you do? Here we are. That's not so bad. Gonna walk through that cloud. I've got these cones set up, traffic cones, marked on the skiway and runway. It's like now, with this blanket of snow, I can't see what's under there. So I place those things, when there's bare ice, so that in case this happens, I know where the best, smoothest underlying ice is. No rocks I'm going to run into, no crevasses or stream channels. When there's a meter of snow, other than the drifts, you can land almost anywhere. Not that I do, I always land here anyway. But in winter, the same thing. Lately, these haven't been poking up, but normally they poke up through the snow. And when you're landing on snow, if there's any kind of an overcast, the light can get really flat. So you can see, all you see is white. You don't see definition in the snow sometimes at all. It's just so having these cones provides that definition and some visual reference, so you don't just slam into the ground, which is an issue. I mean, it happens. It hasn't happened to me, and it hasn't happened here, but I've always had these cones here. So that's one reason I use that weather station for that purpose too. It's just a target that I know, even if I can't see the cones, I know what's around there, and it gives me a visual reference. Coming in the land, especially if I haven't landed, if there's no tracks, there's nothing except the weather station, I come in, I showed the tracks before, I come even shorter than that. I come in, dive bomb down that last 500 feet once I commit, and full flaps, and I get down at the ground effect, I give it power, and I cruise the slope and ground effect, and then when I'm ready to land, the stall horn's just wailing. There's nothing left. I drag the tail and it stops, and in snow I'm stopped in 50 feet. So that visual, that 50 feet comes in, because if I can see that weather station, I've got that 50 feet. I can make that happen. And I come in slow enough and gradual enough, I'm just trying to match the slope and basically let the slope, flying into the slope, in a sense, as slow as I can possibly go. And as soon as I touch down, just pull the power back, pull the yoke back, dig the tail in. And once I know, because the other thing I don't really know when I'm coming in is how drifty it is. You know, I got a good sense, like by late May, mid-May, late May, the drift was all softened up. But I tried to come out here in April this year, and there was a huge windstorm. Must have been a huge windstorm right before I came here, because it's a beautiful day. I could have totally landed, but there's bare ice showing lots of places, and these angular drifts that I just know from experience will break your gear, and they have here. So I didn't land, came back 3 or 4 weeks later in mid-May, and by then we had another foot of snow on top of that, and it was all softened up, and it was perfect. But that first landing, yeah, I come in as slow and as short with every trick in the book so if I do hit a drift, I'm already only going 45. By the time I drag the skis for, plane length, I'm going 30 or 25, and then I'm stopped in 2 plane lengths, if that. So, because I'm going uphill a little bit too. So even if I do hit a drift, I'm going pretty slow already, and I'm not gonna, just do what you can. As little momentum as possible, a little impact as possible. Well, it's dinner time. Did enough damage for the day. Got a tiny bit of solar, not much. There's about an hour where I got maybe 20 watts out of the 100-watt panel for about an hour. Charge my battery up a little bit. Every little bit helps. All this video sucks the battery down a little bit too, so gotta be careful. I'm not sure how much more I can do this. All right, time for food.